So I thought I'd just take a few minutes and do a video about how based in reality and hard facts is the science that's being thrown at us from public health officials about these new variants that are suddenly cropping up and around the world, in England, in the UK, in Brazil, and that they're telling us now, first they're saying, well, it's going to spread a lot more quickly, and now they're telling us not only will it spread more quickly, that it's going to be causing a lot more death, and also that now, before they were saying that these new variants are still going to be fine, that the vaccines are going to deal with them. And now they're saying, no, that won't work either. The vaccines won't work against them. So I just wanted to take a few minutes and just go through, I've written a long article that goes with this, but I wanted to go through some of the science that all these layers upon layers are built on. And those studies are primarily on one mutation that's said to be in the novel coronavirus, and that causes now it causes to be more transmissible, to be more contagious than ever. And there are three main papers that the scientists and public health officials and politicians rely on to tell us that, oh, it's much more transmissible. And I've got the three papers in front of me, and one of them, and the thing is, we have to ask ourselves, where were these published? Were they actually reviewed by other scientists to make sure they're accurate before they were published? And also, are they based on human people interacting with the virus? Or are they based on animal studies like mice with the virus, or even farther removed, just cells from a mouse in a petri dish? And if we look at these three studies, we'll see pretty quickly that they're very far removed, unfortunately, even though the authors say, oh, they reflect on the real virus in real situations and people. The first one is titled Adaptation of SARS-CoV-2 in bulb C mice for testing vaccine efficacy. And what this is they took the virus and they put it through a few cycles of reproducing it. And then they put it into mice, a special type of mouse. And they said, oh, well, look, there's more binding, and therefore there's more binding of the virus to cells in this little model that really was divorced from reality, and therefore it's going to be more contagious, without actually going to that extra important step of saying, well, it is more contagious. So then let's take the next paper, and there's similar problems. This paper is called an engineered decoy receptor for SARS-CoV-2 and broadly binds protein S sequence variants. So they're taking an engineered decoy receptor, so something that's not even real in real life. They engineered it to bind to the virus. And they're saying, oh, it binds very well. It binds a lot. So based on that, we're supposed to say, oh, that means that when we have, because in there's a particular mutation. So they're trying to have us say that, oh, when we have something that has this particular mutation that they've found, and they say it binds more closely, oh, so therefore it's more transmissible. So we kind of just have to take their word for it, because this is just an engineered decoy receptor. Again, it's not really showing anything in real life, and it's not really using proper antibodies. And then we also have a third paper called Deep Mutational Scanning of SARS-CoV-2 Receptor Binding Domain Reveals Constraints on Folding and ACE2 Binding. And so again, this is saying that we're taking a receptor binding domain. So that's just part of the virus, a little part of the virus. They're putting in a petri dish, and they're doing a whole bunch of steps that actually in this paper are very hard to follow. And they're saying, oh, look, there's more binding, and therefore the virus binds more tightly when it has this mutation, and therefore it means it's going to spread more widely. But it's very interesting. I found an article, a quotation from an article from one of the authors of this paper, Deep Mutational Binding, and in fact, from August last year, so just a few months ago. Her name is Alison Greery, and she says, well, you know, the virus as it is, the novel coronavirus, without any mutations, binds quite well to this receptor in the cells. So there's no reason to believe that going beyond that level will make it more pathogenic or transmissible. And you know, it can have a bunch of mutations that won't make any difference. So here is an author of one of these papers, new papers, that says, oh, mutations, it's going to be more transmissible, it's terrible, you know, it's going to be just spread like wildfire. And yet, here she was a few months earlier saying, no, it can bear a lot, there can be a lot of mutations, it won't make any difference. So does biology change in a few months and make that reality different? I don't think so. It just doesn't make any sense. So, and one other thing I'll mention is these key papers on the mutations in the virus. One of them apparently makes it not work so well on what's called the PCR test, or polymerase chain reaction that's used to detect the virus. It doesn't really have as good results. It's got a negative result on one of the key parts of the PCR test. And it's based this supposed change that makes it not behave as well in the PCR test, and they use that to say, oh, here's the new variant. If you look at that paper, it's from a group in France, and they found a total, this paper itself that everything else is built on is only from 6 PCR tests, just 6 tests, and then and that was it. And they also said, and the authors of this paper themselves, they caution, they say, however, the results should be interpreted with caution, that this mutation causes it not to show up as well on the PCR. They say it should be interpreted with caution because a limited number of samples were sequenced. So we couldn't rule out that there's actually something else causing them to be negative on this test, not this particular mutation that people are saying is in these new variants that are spreading like wildfire. So, and they also said there's another problem with these results, that we just can't take them to mean anything. And yet, so what does that mean? But yet we have these ponderous, papers that come out after that, modeling, saying, well, we know this is a problem. They have these mutations that make it more transmissible and much more contagious, and that it's a big problem. And we know it's this particular type of variant because it doesn't fully get the proper result on a PCR test. So they take it as if it's gospel. Even if you read those papers it's based on, it's saying, look, we don't really know. We're only doing this on a few numbers of patients. We need more information. But yet they take it as gospel. Like here, for example, is Public Health Ontario's analysis of the whole situation based on another mathematical model of the results. And they just take it as if, well, we know that they're very transmissible because this new variant binds more to the cells, and we know that they don't act as well on the PCR test, so that's one way we can find it. What we see is a complete divorcing of the pronouncements from the public health officials and the key scientists and now the media saying, well, we have these facts now, it's more transmissible, and we can find it, and it's spreading through the population. So it's completely divorced from reality. So now, and yet they somehow have a captive audience in the media. So people keep on believing and spewing more of this basic, unfortunately, nonsense science, and it keeps getting worse. Now they're saying, well, there's a new variant in South Africa, and also is very dangerous. And they're telling us even more that, oh, well, it looks like, in fact, we won't work even if we can never achieve what's called herd immunity. That means we just won't naturally get immunity to these new variants because they're so dangerous, and that therefore everybody has to be vaccinated. And yet another new bit of information has come out saying not only is it very transmissible and everybody has to be vaccinated, but more people are going to die from it. And if we look at what it's based on, what they're basing it on to say more people are going to die, it's again these just models, mathematical models, and oh gee, they haven't even published those results yet. I guess we just have to take their word for it. So I think we all should ask ourselves, should we just take the word for it of these public health officials and the scientists, or should we do a little bit of our own due diligence? And I've done that, and I find that it's one of those situations where the emperor has no clothes, that the evidence they say that for it being more transmissible, more deadly, just is not solid.